the latest episode of my community podcast, In Conversation with Nickie Aiken. These episodes focus on the important issues affecting people living and working in the two cities. You can listen to all the episodes in the usual places, such as Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And if you enjoy listening, please hit subscribe and rate them. Today we are talking pets. Many people I know have bought pets in the last year as a result of lockdown and people being at home a lot more and feeling that they wanted company. And we have seen a huge rise in people buying dogs in particular. Now, as we come out of the pandemic and people start thinking about returning to work for those who have been working from home, the thought of leaving an animal that they may have purchased during lockdown may be coming to focus their minds because they've been at home for the last 15 months. So how are we going to support our pets as we come out of lockdown? I'm delighted that joining me to discuss this issue is Ryan Neile, who's Head of Behaviour Services at the Blue Cross animal charity based in my constituency, but all over the country. Ryan, thanks so much for joining me today. And I understand you've got a companion, Kit, with you. Hello, Kit.
I do. Yeah, very, very good to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, this is my dog, Kit. Yeah, she's my best friend.
Is she? How long have you had her? How old is she?
She is, I think she's about 5. She was a stray in a pound for about 6 months, and she came into Blue Cross in very bad condition. I fostered her with a view of keeping her until she was ready to rehome, but we never got that far, so she's with me forever now.
Beautiful. Well, welcome, Ryan and Kit. Kit, Ryan, you are obviously behaviour services expert. What does that entail, and what's your typical day in work?
Yes, well, we're a behaviour team that works within Blue Cross, and we basically help everybody with animals, whether that's helping to train our teams to better understand the pets that we have brought in that need training or rehabilitation to improve their chances of being rehomed. And then when we rehome the pets that we take in, we will then support them thereafter. So if people are struggling with their pet's behaviour, sometimes it can be quite a small issue that we can resolve quite quickly. Sometimes they're more complicated and that requires an awful lot more work. But yeah, that's ultimately what we do. So our days are filled with cases that involve people and animals and the various things that can sometimes go wrong.
And have your casework increased over the last 15 months with lockdown? Have you been receiving more calls and cries for help?
Yes, hugely. As a result of lockdown, we really adapted the service that we provide, not just to Blue Cross customers, but to anybody that was struggling with their pet's behaviour. So yeah, a huge rise in the kind of requests that we were having. A lot of novice dog owners, a lot of people that hadn't had pets before, that were just generally struggling with what to do. And the lockdown period was a really challenging time. This Kit's
got a cold. Has he got hay fever? Or she got hay fever?
So it was an unprecedented time where we were trying to adapt to give advice under very challenging times when people couldn't go out.
Yeah, and is it usually more dog owners that come to you, or is it owners of all types of animals?
All sorts of pets, most commonly dogs, followed by cats, but we also provide help for people with any kind of pet, whether that's a rabbit or a rat or a mouse.
Okay, and have you found that people have been impulse buying over the last 15, 16 months because of the pandemic? Has it been a big issue?
Without doubt. I think there's been a huge increase in that type of problem where people haven't necessarily taken the time to really research whether, firstly, it's right for them to have a pet in their lives. And if we're talking about dogs, dogs are so diverse in terms of their size and the reasons for which they've been bred. So without that proper research, families have acquired dogs that need very, very specific care, and they need their needs met in a very specific way. And that's been a huge challenge for them.
Have you got any particular examples of the people you've helped, particularly those who've maybe impulse sport and suddenly realise what they have let themselves in for?
Yeah. So, for example, we've had lots of examples, but quite recently, somebody that bought a border collie puppy from a farm, whose parents were working sheepdogs.
And they need a lot of, I guess they need an awful lot of exercise, and they're used to exercise. They're bred for exercise.
Exactly. Yeah. So sort of genetically predisposed to want to work, high requirements for physical exercise, extremely intelligent, so brilliant problem-solving dogs. And then that puppy was taken from that environment to a very built-up area where the owners didn't really have a lot of time to do training and socializing. So the result of that was that the puppy started to grow up and experience the kind of behavioral problems that would occur when they can't fulfill their natural behavior.
They must be getting very frustrated, and obviously becoming an adolescent, at the same time as not having the exercise and the outside life that a border collie expects. It must have been a real issue for them.
Yes, I think puppyhood, whatever breed of dog you get, is challenging because they grow up and they like to chew things with their mouth, they like to explore. So that's always quite a challenging time for any dog owner. But if you've acquired a dog that isn't really compatible with your lifestyle, then that certainly the dogs in question can become frustrated by the lack of opportunities that they have to be a border collie. That's quite a common thing for us. And the way around that is we look to try to provide owners with a really suitable alternative that will allow that dog to express that natural behavior, and so that they can have a fulfilling life that's almost the next best thing to being on a farm chasing sheep.
So what did you do with the owners of the border collie? How did you help them? And was it a happy outcome?
Yes, fingers crossed, things are going really, really well. But the process is quite complicated because what we often do as stage one is to just change the owner's expectations. So if a dog is being unruly, or if a dog isn't coming back when called, or if a dog is chewing, it's not necessarily because the dog is trying to annoy the owners. It's because they're dogs and they're behaving as dogs do. And training is a journey, a process that you develop over time. So we can't really be frustrated with dogs if they don't do the things that we haven't taken the time to teach them to understand properly. So we change their expectations, give them very achievable goals, and then we build that momentum up. So if we take a border collie, for example, they like to chase, they like to herd, they like to problem solve. So we adapt games, we adapt training techniques, so that really does suit that type of dog. So the dog is really enjoying this new lifestyle because we're tapping into all of those instincts that border collies have that make them feel good. And it's like anything. If the task that someone sets you is enjoyable, you like doing it. If it's not very fun, then you're not so inclined to want to do it again. So training and learning, whether that's for people or animals, should be fun, and it should encourage the learner to want to keep learning.
Looking at the opposite issue, so many people who can have worked from home, and so animals, particularly cats and dogs, who are used to perhaps not having people around in the day, and maybe not, dogs not used to going for walks in the middle of the day. They may have a walk in the morning and then in the evening. Their lifestyles have had a bit of a change over the last 15, 16 months with more people at home. So does that have a knock-on effect for an animal in a good or a bad way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're absolutely right. And I think if we had to spend all of our time with, locked in a house with people, as we did in those early stages of lockdown, tensions would run high because you're used to just having your own time, or you're used to going to work and having that big break. And we found that there were problems resulting in that period where children that weren't going to school were continuously chasing the rabbit around in the garden for fun and for entertainment. And cats that are used to having the day to sleep were being played with. So there was pressure being placed on those relationships. And in some cases, those pets, in frustration or because their tolerance was being sort of pushed, started to react defensively. So we had a period where a lot of really well-adjusted pets were starting to get really fed up with the constant attention they were getting from their family members. And the advice that we were giving was to just respect their space and to leave them alone and to...
That's fascinating, isn't it, Ryan? Because, we've had so much emphasis on our own well-beings and our own mental health that I think very few people have really understood the knock-on effect for animals' mental welfare.
Yeah, massively. Yeah, and all animals are individuals distinctly. So when we look at dogs, they're so diverse. So you have different breeds of dogs, but then within those breeds, you also have individuals. So some dogs really love to be center of attention and they love to be touched and stroked all of the time, but other dogs don't. And you have to really understand the dog that you have or the pet that you have and respect them for who they are. And a relationship is a two-way thing. So I might want to cuddle my pet because I'm feeling lonely, but if it's an experience that they're not going to enjoy, then I have to respect that. So trying to help to educate people to better understand their pets so that they can really maximize on the potential that relationship can have.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Now, obviously, we're coming out of restrictions. We've had restrictions lifted as we've gone through the roadmap, and fingers crossed, we will be enjoying Freedom Day on the 19th of July. And with that, I think we've seen since about April more people deciding to come back to the office if they've worked from home. And we hopefully see more and more of that, though there's likely to be a hybrid system for many people just coming into the office 2 or 3 days a week for the foreseeable future. So going back to my point about animals, lives have changed dramatically over the last year or so with having families at home more. Now we're going to be seeing a transition of families leaving and being out of the house, perhaps not full-time, but more likely to be several days a week. How is that going to affect their pets? And what should pet owners who are in that situation start to think about how they transition their own pets and give the pets, some understanding that they are going to be left on their own? I mean, probably some animals can't wait to their families to be out of the house and are counting down the days. But seriously, it is going to be a major change for many, particularly dogs and cats.
No, you're absolutely right. And my advice is to really start now. If as you say, a lot of people are doing a phased return, or we're just starting to talk about that process now, and not to delay giving your pets the experience of varying degrees of separation from human contact. And that can start very, very small. So for example, in the evening, every time Coronation Street is on, I'm going to get a Kong, which is a very sort of well-known dog toy, sort of a hollow where you can sort of pack meat inside, but it can be anything. I'm going to put that in another room. So for the duration of my favorite TV program, my dog is away from me, having a very pleasurable experience on her own. And that's one experience that I can be giving on a regular routine that starts to give her the experience of what that feels like and the fact that it's okay. And if it's a really lovely day, the feeling is, oh, it's a really lovely day, let's grab the lead, let's take the dog out for a walk. And I would ask owners to consider on those occasions to leave their dog at home for a small period of time, just so, again, we're starting to drip feed in the new normal, which will include periods of isolation away from human contact. And when we're at home, if we're the type of person that is following a dog around, constantly picking them up and stroking them, the contrast of you being away is going to be quite stark. So start now realizing, am I overwhelming my pet and constantly touching them and loving on them? Could I be gradually stepping back at key times so that the intensity of that relationship isn't so strong, so that when I walk out of the door, my pet is bereft because they feel like they can't cope without me. It's a bit like children. You know, we parent them so that they can cope without us. That's the kind of overall aim. We give them the social skills so they can cope by themselves. And I think that process is really important, more so with dogs, who we tend to take everywhere with us, and are social animals. So they're very dependent on being in a family group, that we give them the skills. And that we can only achieve that by teaching them, giving them experiences, letting them know that these things are okay. And when we do that, then they often develop a really good tolerance for that kind of separation.
Is it advisable to say, when you go out, and particularly if you're going to work for for the whole day, is it worth putting the radio on? I know a few people I know have animals who leave the radio on to give them company and hear human voices. Is that a good thing, or is it just up to your own individual choice?
Yeah, it very much depends. I think that dogs shouldn't really be left all day. So I think if that's the lifestyle that you have, I would consider whether it's fair and reasonable to leave a dog at home all day. If that is the situation, then I would really reach out to friends, family members. Is there somebody that could come and sit with a dog or break up that period of isolation? Definitely something that I would be asking people to consider doing. But radios are, for some dogs they can provide comfort. For some dogs they can muffle outside noises which might cause them to bark. But things that are constant, often we habituate to, and dogs do too. So if something is always on, we just learn to ignore it. So it's a bit like living by an airport. You know, you hear them, you're conscious of them for the first couple of days, and then you just stop listening to them. So they can be useful tools in some cases. I would say that if there are people listening that are genuinely worried, there is an amazing wealth of information on the Blue Cross website. So if you come onto the website, there's lots of stuff that you can look up that will give you some clear direction. But if you're wanting more help, there's an incredible organization called the Animal Behavior Training Council, the ABTC. And if you were to give them a Google, they will put you in touch with a qualified behaviorist in your area. So as I was saying, all like us, you know, we all react differently to situations, and so do our pets. So there are some generic tips which can be very useful. But if you're worried, or you really get the feeling this is going to be complicated, then an expert is going to tailor advice so that you can really build a good plan.
Thank you so much today for being with us today. It's been fascinating, and I think you've really given a great insight into how we can support our pets during this difficult time in lockdown, but as we come out of it. Finally, is there any particular advice, tips you could give to pet owners, particularly living in central London, in the two cities where I represent? What 3 tips could you give them?
3 tips. I feel very passionately that if you're worried about anything to do with your pet, ask for help. And the second piece of advice is where you go for that help, because this day and age, social media, if you go online, there is an ocean of unregulated advice, some of which is very damaging. So ignore Google and go to places like the Blue Cross, go to the ABTC, speak to the experts, because they can give you that really strong, well-founded, evidence-based advice that's going to help you. And the third piece is to recognize that your pet, whether a cat, rabbit, dog, is an individual, and to really understand what they need from a life in order to have a wonderful relationship with you. And that's the way that we can really enjoy that perfect relationship.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Ryan, for all you do to support pet owners and pets and your team and everybody at the Blue Cross. It's a fantastic organisation, and there is help available on the Blue Cross website. So if you are returning to work and soon, and you are concerned about your pets, then do check out all their advice on their website. And thank you for joining us. And Kit, wherever Kit is, thanks, Kit. Can we have one last look at Kit?
Okay.
Thank you, Kit, for coming on and joining us. And there you are. Thanks. Oh, look. Hello, Kit. Goodbye, Kit. Thanks, everybody, and take care.
You're welcome. Thank you.